Before we get started, yes, this is the second video about mobile I've made in a row, but don't worry though, it's for a good reason. We have a lot of new information to cover. Pretty much all of this comes from the Q&A from 4 or 5 days ago, so thank you to Mod Archie, Mod John C, Mod Mike, and Mod Shauny for making pretty much this entire video possible. Anyway, on to the video. It's going to be broken up into chunks. First, I'll cover general questions, which are things that everyone seems to be either confused about or fairly interested in. Second, I'll cover beta questions, things like how you can get into the beta, what's going to be in the beta itself, and etc. Lastly, I'll cover the future of the app, for example, features that won't exist in beta but may exist at launch or in a few years down the line. So let's get into the first section. RuneScape Mobile is going to run on both Android and iOS, and you will be able to use the same account across all devices. That means PC, Mac, Android, iOS, and so on. The game will also have full tablet support. In theory, you should be able to do everything on the mobile version that you can already do on the computer. An example of this is in a very early version of the game, a few testers were able to one-tick prayer switch. Chances are some content will be a bit harder on mobile, but it should all be doable. Anyway, the app is going to be completely free and there will be no microtransactions. That means 0 in old school, and MTX will continue the same way it does normally in RS3. This means you won't have to pay an extra 99 cents to get a different UI or something like that. But that does still mean if you're an RS3 player, you can buy whatever cosmetics you'd like from the Solomon store. There just won't be anything mobile specific. Along with this, no content will be created specifically for mobile. Everything will be made with a desktop version in mind first. So this all sounds great, but how big is it and how's the battery usage? So for old school, the initial size is just 2 megabytes, and after all the cache is downloaded, it reaches 50 megabytes. RS3 on the other hand, didn't give any exact numbers, but expected to be decently bigger. Battery usage shouldn't be too bad as well, as they're trying to optimize it as much as they possibly can. Now I'll just go through a few more random questions real quick and we'll get on to the next section. The game runs at about 60 FPS currently on top phones. Old school should have small data usage, while RS3's is unknown. The mobile version will not affect update frequency. The app can run in the background while you're doing other things, and lastly, you are able to mute the in-game music and listen to your own music in the background through any service of your choice, whether that's something like Spotify or Apple Music. Now on to the beta. First off, currently over 150,000 people have applied to test, and it's fairly evenly split between old school and RuneScape 3. It is also almost equally split between Android and iOS. Keep in mind, no beta emails have been sent out yet, so if you've received one, don't click it. It's 100% a scam, unless of course you're watching this video a few months after the upload date. So when is the beta coming out? Jagex says they hope old school beta will launch in Q4 of this year. How well that goes will determine when the full version will be available. RuneScape 3 plans to follow shortly after old school. I'm assuming most of you have already registered for the beta, but if not, go do so. Even for those that have, there's a few other things you can do to perhaps increase your chances of getting in. First is that if you have 2 phones, let's say an Android and an iPhone, register twice. You'll probably need to do it from a different computer though, because SurveyMonkey will detect you've already registered, and you'll need a second RuneScape account for your second entry. So now that you've done that, you're probably wondering, what is Jagex looking for in beta testers? How can I have the biggest chance to get in? Well, Jagex says there's no real criteria yet on how they're picking testers. They have to sort through about 150,000 applications, but they're looking for the right devices to test on. They also mention owning an unusual device may be a good thing. Other than that, there's no real preset criteria, besides maybe being a frequent and passionate player of the game. Now let's say you are one of the lucky 1,000 that make it into the beta. What does Jagex want from you? Firstly, they want performance data from Android and iOS devices. Chances are they can just get that themselves through Google and Apple. Other than that, they want player feedback on things such as the UI, as well as reports of any bugs they might come across. So let's say you did it, you got into the beta and you're ready to help Jagex. What does this mean for your playing experience? First is that the beta will be on live game servers, so you won't lose any of your progress. This sounds great, right? But what if a bug causes you to, let's say, lose some items? Well, they don't really seem to know yet, as they're not quite sure what to do. They say they're going to think about it. Chances are they'll handle everything on a case-by-case basis. Personally, I wouldn't worry too much though. Anyway, now on to the final section. So what is the future of mobile looking like? What features do they want to add or are going to add? And will we ever see mobile ported to maybe anything else? First is, why is RuneScape 3 coming out later? Well, this one is fairly obvious. RS3 is a lot bigger, so it takes much longer to port over. On to the next question, as you imagine, mobile will bring in a lot more players. Will more worlds or will mobile-only worlds be added? The current plan from Jagex is no, but they may do this or make changes to the current worlds if necessary. Another interesting thing to note is some training methods will be way faster on mobile, such as fletching darts. They have no plans to change this, but if it threatens game integrity, they'll put it under review. Speaking of training, there are no plans to introduce offline progression to the game, as it is an MMORPG, so you will have to be online to play. As for future features, they'd like to add something like fingerprint login, and toggleable notifications to tell you things such as if an item is sold on the GE. As for things that won't be introduced, there are no plans for consoles or VR support. The companion app is also going to be decommissioned, as you can now do everything through the respective mobile apps for each game. Anyway, I think I've covered at least the most interesting and important facts from the Q&A. I did leave a couple out as I didn't want this video to be bigger than it already is. If you'd like to read through the full Q&A transcript, I'll leave a link in the description below. So, what are your thoughts on mobile? Do you have any cool features that you think they should add? Leave them in the comments below. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.